Hey YouTube, what's going on? Snowflakey's Emos here today with another deck profile. This is an update to my Thunderclap Skywolf deck profile. This is a deck I've had for a little bit and is always pretty fun to play. It's just a deck that revolves around summoning Thunderclap Skywolf, which is a monster that when it's summoned, of course, can destroy all face-up monsters your opponent controls. And that just makes it pretty cool. This is a deck where we can just wipe our opponent's board constantly, and that makes it very fun, very disruptive strategy I definitely enjoy. So with that said, let's get into the cards. Starting off with our monsters, I am playing 2 copies of Thunderclap Skywolf. Thunderclap Skywolf is a 7-star 2500 attack monster that says if this card is special summoned from the graveyard, you can destroy all face-up monsters your opponent controls. You cannot conduct your battle phase the turn you activate this effect, which isn't a big deal if we activate this during our opponent's turn, which is mostly when we're going to do it, to disrupt their plays. Thunderclap Skywolf is a pretty sweet card. Art looks sick, and that effect is just really fun. The goal of this deck is we're trying to get this guy into the graveyard so we can reborn it out a number of times. We're playing 2 because 3 is too bricky. We don't want to see this card in our hand, but we don't want to get beaten by the single call by the grave that can pull one of these things out. So, 2 is the ratio I've settled on, and I'm pretty satisfied with it at that point. Next up for monsters, I am playing 3 copies of Batteryman Solar. So this is a 1500 attack 4-star monster. Why this card is good is if this card's normal or special summoned, you can send a thunder monster from your deck to the graveyard. Thunderclap Skywolf, of course, is a thunder monster, so that's who we're going to be sending. Other than that, that's basically this guy's only use. There is a interaction that you have to note with this card, though, which is when this card's on the field, if you special summon a Thunder monster, you have to special summon a Thunder token, which is a level light 0 attack and 0 defense token. Those tokens kind of get in the way in this deck. They can serve as tribute fodder to get a Thunderclap Skywolf out of the hand so we can get it in the graveyard. But just keep that in mind because they will clog your board. You can definitely throw in some Link Spiders or some stuff in the extra deck if you want to have a way to get rid of those tokens, but just something to keep in mind. And last for the monsters, I am playing 3 copies of Thunder Seahorse. Thunder Seahorse is a pretty cool card. You can discard this card to add a level 4 Light Thunder monster with the same name and 1600 or less attack from the deck to your hand, which is pretty cool. Now you cannot special summon during the turn you activate this effect, which isn't a big deal. We're going to be special summoned during our opponent's turn, not ours. But this guy basically reads, grab 2 Batteryman Solar, and we need Batteryman Solar to dump Thunderclap Skywolf, so we definitely want to be seeing this card. Any additional copies, of course, are just normal summonable bodies to help close out the game. And that is it for our monster card. It's a very low monster count. This is a Card of Demise, Trap, Stun style deck. Next up here, we're going into our spells. I am playing 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. Pot of Extravagance is a great card because we can turn our extra deck into draw power. We don't use our extra deck very much in this deck, so we are going to banish 6 of those extra deck cards face down to draw 2. We can't use any other drawing effects, of course, during the turn we play this card, but that is no big deal. We are happy to just get the extra card on the turn. Next up, I am playing 3 copies of Pot of Duality. We're not doing a lot of special summoning on our turn. Thunder Seahorse doesn't let us do that. And Thunderclap Skywolf, of course, we want to summon on our opponent's turn so that we can still attack on our turn after we wipe their board a number of times. So Pot of Duality to look at the top 3 cards of our deck and add 1 to our hand, shuffling the rest back is pretty good exchange for that special summoning. And last for our spell cards, we are playing 1 copy of Card of Demise. We have a very low monster count, lots of trap cards. And this is just a great card to help reload our hand. We draw until we have 3 cards in our hand. Now we can't special summon during this turn. And our opponent takes no damage after the, in the battle phase after we play this card. But that's no big deal. At the end of the turn, we're going to lose our entire hand to the graveyard, which isn't a big deal either because most of our cards are trap cards that we are just going to set. And if we get stuck with an extra monster, like say an extra Thunderclap Skywolf, well, we want that guy in the grave anyway. So if we draw into one, it goes to the grave. No big deal. That's just where we got him. So just a good card to reload the hand, get a bunch of traps. Very good card for this deck. And that is it for the spells. Next up, we are going into our trap cards. Starting off, I am playing 3 copies of Back to the Front. This is the first of our series of Graveyard Revival traps that we are going to be playing in this deck. Back to the Front is a pretty good one that just says target a monster in your graveyard and special summon it in defense mode. So it's pretty nice. It gets off the field. It's not a continuous trap like many of the others of this deck. But that's nice because we can just pull Thunderclap Skywolf out of the deck and out of the graveyard. And once Thunderclap Skywolf is on the field from the graveyard, its effect will activate, wiping our opponent's board. So a pretty good card to have. Next up, I am playing 3 copies of Oasis of Dragon Souls. This is a continuous trap that just says activate by targeting a monster in our graveyard. Special summon it in defense position. It becomes a worm type monster, and of course, when this card leaves the field, destroy that monster. And when that monster leaves the field, destroy this card. So, just another trap to summon Thunderclap Skywolf out of the graveyard. Doesn't matter that it becomes a worm monster. We're not making too much use of the type, so just the fact that it pulls it out of the graveyard is another good reason to have it. And last for my revival traps, I am playing 3 copies of Call of the Haunted. Call of the Haunted is the classic continuous trap that just selects a monster from the graveyard and special summons it in face-up attack position. While this card is removed from the field, destroy that monster, and when that monster is destroyed, destroy this card. So this one can get stuck on your back row, clogging it up, but not a big deal. Perfectly worth having because we want to get Thunderclap Skywolf out of the grave. Now that we're through our revival traps, I am also playing 3 copies of Torrential Tribute. Torrential Tribute, of course, is just the board wipe in trap card form. So in addition to our Thunderclap Skywolves able to wipe an opponent's board, we can then Torrential Tribute. And if we need to do a lot of board wipes in one turn, we can easily summon Skywolf, Thunderclap Skywolf, disrupt the opponent's board. They start summoning more monsters. We play Torrential Tribute, wipe the board again, and then if they push one more time, we can resummon Thunderclap Skywolf with another revival trap, which is pretty sweet. But Torrential Tribute, of course, when a monster is summoned, you just destroy all monsters on the field. So a good card to have in this style deck. Next, our big win con in the deck is Summon Limit. This card is extremely good in this deck. Summon Limit is a continuous trap that says neither player can summon more than 2 times. This card combos so well with Torrential or Skywolf because if our opponent summons their second monster, we play Skywolf. Skywolf's effects can activate. We can chain Summon Limit. We can wipe their board, and they're not going to be able to summon any more monsters, which means they're going to pass their turn on an empty board, giving us the ability to attack them directly. Now, that's very important to do. We want to be able to close out the game quickly before our opponent can build up enough steam to out this card or out our strategy in general. To protect our summon limit, namely, I am playing 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. Solemn Judgment just pays half our life points to negate a normal or special summon or a spell or trap card activation. That doesn't hurt at all. We want to keep summon limit on the field. We're a back row heavy deck. We don't like Harpy's Feather Duster. We don't like Lightning Storm. So playing this card at a select time can keep us in the game, and keeping us in the game long enough will keep us in to win the game. Next up, because I'm playing such a heavy back row deck, I am playing 2 copies of Waking the Dragon. Waking the Dragon is pretty cool because if this set card in its owner's control is removed from the field and is now in the graveyard or banished, you can special summon a monster from the deck or extra deck. We don't have a lot of extra deck plays in this, so loading up our extra deck with targets to summon off of Waking the Dragon is a great play. Pretty cool things what will summon that we'll see later in the video. Next up, I'm playing 2 copies of Heavy Storm Duster. This is just a pick for me in my dueling circle. There's lots of spell and trap card decks in our group, Trap Tricks, Labyrinth, things like that. So Heavy Storm Duster serves me very well. It's a trap card that targets up to 2 spells and traps and destroys them in exchange for our battle phase. Very similar to having to skip the battle phase of Thunderclap Skywolf, but like Thunderclap Skywolf, we're mostly playing this card during our opponent's turn, so we don't worry about that lost battle phase at all. And 1 card to destroy 2 spell or traps is always very nice. Next up, I'm playing 2 copies of Solemn Strike. Nice little card to have in here just to deal with problematic monster effects or extra special summons. Solemn Strike, of course, pays 1500 life points to negate a monster effect or a special summon and destroy that monster. Just a nice card to have in here. We're not negating monster effects in this like many of my skill drain decks, so having something like that to handle them is pretty good. And last for the trap cards, I am playing 1 copy of Drowning Mirror Force. This is 1 card I just like in here. It's kind of just fun, but, it's very unexpected and can blow an opponent out. We can easily have them summon 2 monsters, play Summon Limit if we don't have the Thunderclap Skywolves ready to go. They can attack into it, shuffle everything back into the deck. Very punishing card. And at 1, you don't see it all the time, but at 1, when you get it, you can surprise an opponent by it, and then, they'll start playing around it. So, but that's okay because we only have one. So just a fun card. You can always swap this out for something that you deem more efficient. I would argue if you're trying to make this deck more competitive, you should probably maybe side out those last 3 cards for just another series of powerful floodgates that work with this deck, like Gozen or Rivalry. But that is it for the main deck. Going into our extra deck real quick, I am playing 3 copies of Last Warrior from Another Planet. This extra deck is all targets that can be summoned off of Waking the Dragon. Last Warrior from Another Planet is a really nice card because it just says when this card's on the field, neither player can summon monsters. So if their opponent's board is open when they hit us with the Lightning Storm or the Harpy's Feather Duster, we can summon Last Warrior, and then all they could do is set monsters, and we can whittle away. So just a nice option to have. Next up, we are playing 3 copies of Naturia Exterio. Exterio is a good monster to pull out in certain matchups that are very spell and trap dependent because this card can negate spells and traps on either player's turn and not even once per turn. All you have to do is have a card in the graveyard to banish and then send the top card of your deck to the graveyard. So as long as you have that set up, you can keep banishing spells and traps infinitely. So if a matchup is very dependent on their spells and traps resolving, they are not going to like to see that card. Next up, I am playing 3 copies of Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon. Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon is a nice boss monster to have. It's a 3,500 attack monster that's unaffected by other card effects. That makes it really hard to deal with. You're either going to have to kaiju over it or find a way to beat it by battle. And there are just certain decks and matchups that are not going to be able to deal with that monster. And that makes Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon a good target to go into. Next up, I'm playing 3 copies of Blue Eyes Alternative Ultimate Dragon. This monster has 4,500 attack. Now it can't be targeted or destroyed by card effects, which is not as good as being unaffected, but still pretty good. And 4,500 attack, an extra 1,000 attack is pretty nice to have. Additionally, this card has an effect that we can destroy a card on the field instead of attacking with it this turn, and that can come in handy. Just a good option to fill out the extra deck. And lastly, I am playing 3 copies of Geomathmech Final Sigma. When we special summon this card in the extra monster zone, it's unaffected by card effects except Mathmech cards, which basically makes it a, Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon. But it's got 500 less attack, which isn't so bad, but it does gain the effect that when you do battle damage to your opponent by battle with a monster with this card, that battle damage is doubled. So that's really nice. If they have a weak attack monster on the field and you just want to, rip through it and do a lot of damage. So a good option to have to round out our Waking the Dragon extra deck. So that is it for the Thunderclap Skywolf deck profile. I always enjoy playing this deck. It's fun just constantly summoning out this guy again, only to wipe an opponent's board. I've certainly frustrated a number of opponents with how many board wipes can constantly be going on with this deck. And of course, them having to deal with board wipes and then getting summon limit is very powerful. So just a fun deck to pick up and play if I want to play some kind of stun strategy that's not the best stun strategy. So I enjoy this deck very much. Let me know if you've ever played Thunderclap Skywolf or a deck like this. Love to know what your thoughts are about it. I appreciate you checking out the video, and I'll catch you in the next one.